to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Bob Dancer is America's premier video poker writer and teacher. He's written 10 books, including Video Poker for the Intelligent Beginner and the best-selling $1 Million Video Poker. He helped develop the computer software Video Poker for Winners, and in 2004 he was inducted into the Video Poker Hall of Fame. Richard Munchkin has been a professional advantage player for over 30 years and is in the Blackjack Hall of Fame. His book, Gambling Wizards, Conversations with the World's Greatest Gamblers, is a testament to the many ways you can succeed at gambling. The goal of the show is that you'll be a more knowledgeable gambler tomorrow than you were yesterday. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is an advantage player of East Indian origin who's been an advantage player, primarily blackjack, for 5 years and part-time before that. He goes by the name Ram, or sometimes Steve Waugh. So, Ram, Steve, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Thanks, Bob. Glad to be here.
Good. Glad to have you. Now, let's talk about you growing up in India. How did you go from growing up in India to become a blackjack player?
Oh, it's a long story.
How about the 5-minute version?
I did all my growing up in India. I grew up in a household where my parents had a very high importance for education, and I'm very glad for that. So went through some very good institutes for engineering first, and then did my business degree, the back of it. And then subsequently worked in different firms. In Germany, I was in a steel plant, and then I worked back in India. And then I came to the U.S. As a project manager for an IT firm. And so over 8 or 9 years of work, I had kind of realized that that was not exactly what I was really looking for. And I had, by that time, I had started playing some blackjack as a hobby. And the way it started was my friends would take me. These are civilians and ploppy friends who would take me to casinos to, go hang out. And I had no interest whatsoever in gambling at all. Like, I wouldn't even risk a single dollar. And I would just collect all these brochures about the rules of these different games. And I said, okay, maybe there's a way to beat these. And I would go on the online, and I would try to see if there are strategies to beat it. And then I found that, there is a way to beat this game. And at that moment, it was basic strategy blackjack. And I thought, okay, there is a way to play it, but does it still give me an edge? And I realized no. And then I got a subscription, a free subscription to BJ21, the most popular gambling forum out there.
That's Stanford Wong's site for our listeners.
Yes, I managed to read some basic books, mainly Tharp's book, and also I think Professional Blackjack, and maybe even Snyder's book. But I was playing with a very, I was still like just about a slightly better than a break-even player. I was using some indices, and I was playing very low stakes, and primarily it was an expression of, it's my way of expressing myself and using my skill with numbers. And so that paved the way for me getting into this on a serious level. In particular, I would like to express my gratitude to a person who goes by the handle Flash, and he tutors a lot of recreational upcoming players, And he took me under his wings, and we exchanged numerous emails every week. And he would he fast-tracked my progression from a rookie card counter to someone he considered was very good to play professionally. And so I did this for 2 years part-time, and I was making a handy sum of money playing part-time. And then they said, okay, there is maybe a time to give this a shot playing full-time and see, and have my own schedule and see how life treats me. And then I did that for I've been doing it for five years full-time after that.
And you got up to betting really quite high stakes over the last 5 years. Was that progression, did that make you nervous at all when you started betting more money? Or how did that come about, going from, red chips up to, purple and yellow?
Yeah, so I had allocated a certain sum of money from my day job and said, okay, this is, and at that time it was like 10,000, and then I said, I'm going to play red chips on this using this bankroll. And then as I started doing well, I also added more capital from my day job and said, there's no point trying to just play red chips. I'm going to, graduate to green chips and black chip level. And my work had also taken me to parts of the Midwest where they had games with very little heat, but they're very low stakes. So serious professionals wouldn't really go and try and play those games because, the stakes weren't very high. But it was great for me at that point in time because they were perfect stakes, maxes of like 200 maxes and 150 maxes. And then I started going up to 150, 200, and then slowly up to 500 max games. But I would even only bet like 2 hands of 300 tops or 2 hands of 400. And that was at the end of my first year. So I started my first year of full-time play betting with a max bet of like 2 hands of 60 or 2 hands of 75, and I ended the year betting 2 hands of 400. But it was gradual, and I was very, very conscious about fractional Kelly betting. And
so, what fraction do you use? How do you break your bankroll down in terms of deciding what to bet?
I said, at that moment, I said what I was comfortable risking. And at that point, I was initially with a very low bank, it was 10,000, it was a replenishable bankroll. So, I wasn't betting fractional Kelly, but it was, once I got confidence that I was able to beat this, I was betting, I said I was going to play half Kelly. And so for and this is, and people who are for someone who's new to Kelly, it's a very, very easy way to understand is you are betting a percentage of your bankroll that is proportionate to your advantage, and you're also taking into account something for the splits and doubles of that. And if you have a 1% edge, you're betting 0.76 times 1% of your bankroll. That's full Kelly. It will give you 13% risk of ruin. And you bet only half of it, it's half Kelly, it'll give you 5% risk of ruin. And
well, that's if you don't change your betting. I mean, if you were really betting Kelly, then as your bankroll decreased, you would reduce what you were betting. And you would have no risk of ruin.
Yeah, you'll have absolutely no risk of ruin. And for the first year, considering that my stakes were, it was still first 2 years when I was playing seriously, but I was still playing part-time, and it was a replenishable bankroll, so I didn't have to worry about it. Once I went to full-time, yes, I was always betting such a low fraction that it was about quarter Kelly or lower or thereabouts, that I really didn't have to think about reducing the stakes. And most often when you're playing games with higher edges, which is outside of card counting, your stakes are more limited by the heat reasons than than anything else. So,
how long did that take before you got into things besides card counting?
So that was 2011 was my first full year of professional play, and 2012, the second year of my full-time play, was when I got into advanced play. And it's another interesting thing I would like to bring in is how I networked. Initially, before I was full-time, I was very paranoid about meeting other players, because who knows who's going to be there. It could be a casino employee, So I was super careful. Then I met a few players who are serious players but low stakes players, and I got comfortable meeting and said, "Oh, these are just people like me, and they're guys who know things about the game." And I came out more, and I exchanged a lot of emails with some of these serious players on the forums, and that you moved it up to the next step by having phone contact. And actually, some of my closest friends in the community are people whom I've known since 2009, and they are even when I meet those guys now, we don't even talk about blackjack or anything. We just talk as friends. We have so much to talk outside of the gambling world, and I can relate to a lot of what your opinions on this, Richard, when you said you would not really travel alone to play a lot, because you value the company of the other players and all the things that go along with it. And my best trips have been trips when I've gone with other friends and we've done team play.
You don't sound like you have blonde hair and blue eyes. Do you find that is an advantage at the blackjack table or a disadvantage?
When I started off, it was a huge advantage. But
superpower.
When I started off, but it didn't take very long for that to go from a big advantage to being a small disadvantage, because a lot of casinos know of this one East Indian guy who is dangerous in this game and who has to be, for whom they have to be on the lookout for. And so that was an issue, because they don't have to scan through a lot of different pictures.
Okay.
Get to me. So the initial value was so high, but once I got into the databases, and once I had a certain amount of fame or notoriety in a particular region, it was almost impossible for me to go and make my second round at the same casino unless I waited 3 years, probably.
Wow, that's a long wait.
So a related question: do you ever disguise yourself when you go into the casino so that maybe you do have blonde hair and blue eyes when you come back the second time?
I have done it twice. The first time I did it was from one of the stores that sold like Halloween stuff or something like that, and I said, anything is better than just going as myself. And it was a play that was very valuable. I had a big player with me, and it was, we were going to try and do this at any cost. So I got this fake wig, which was basically plastic, and
convincing plastic?
No. So what happens is, I tried to get a table where the wall was right behind us, so nobody could really see me. But when I would walk around to go to the restroom or whatever, people could see my how what it is, but nobody's paying attention. But my big player texts me and says, yo, your hair looks ridiculously bad. And this is, and yet we got in 4 hours of play, and we managed to beat the place again. But when we went for dinner and came back, they actually asked for my ID, and they wanted to see who I was. So
Time
that
to
was
leave.
the first time. The second time, I went to Las Vegas. I had talked to Tommy Highland, and he had recommended a store. And I talked to a couple of other professionals too, who had recommended me some stores, and I got some disguise material. And I went to my hair salon on the East Coast where I used to live, and I told my stylist, you got to help me out here. This is for a play at an Atlantic City store, and the store was going to close in less than a month. So we really don't care what happens, but I'm going to try and pull this off on a shift that doesn't know me very well, and I'm going to have to do it. And so she said, "This is not my thing. I don't know. I want to help you, but let me do it." And after like multiple visits, we got this gray hair with all the, literally, it was like an actor or someone getting all the stuff done. There's all that sticky glue on my face, and it's very, it's kind of very irritating feeling that you have on your face. And I ended up doing the play with my big player. We didn't sleep that night, all through the night. We were playing at a different store, waited until 4 a.m. and played straight for 5 hours, and did well. And by the time we were done and I came back to my hotel, I could see that stuff was actually coming off. So I said, had I just stayed another 20 minutes, they would have seen the beard falling off my face. And,
I had a friend who had a lot of heat, and he was playing here in town in Las Vegas, and he had on, a wig and a fake beard and kind of a fisherman's hat. And he was sitting at the table, and a pit boss went walking by and did a 180 and came and looked at him, and he goes, "Is that a fake beard?" And what can the guy say, right? So he goes, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, it looks like it." And he just turned around and kept walking, and nothing happened. He got to continue to play. So,
wow.
Yeah, disguises become a real pain in the ass, though. I mean, almost everyone I know who has tried them just ends up giving it up because it's so, like you said, they start melting. It starts running off your face, and it gets on your hands, and you can't rub your eye, and yeah, it's
now,
a big
Richard,
hassle.
you were an actor, and maybe still are an actor, and so you're more used to disguises than most people are. Are they still irritating to you too?
Yeah, absolutely they are, and I, for the most part, abandoned them other than curling my hair, straightening my hair, cutting it, growing it, facial hair, glasses, easy things like that, where you do one thing and it's there and that's it, as opposed to putting on makeup. And I had one friend, we were playing in Korea, so, it was a big advantage to look Asian. And a girl who did special effects makeup on the movies I worked on, we hired her to make this guy up. And we got this black wig, and she put this elastic band around the back of his head that pulled his eyes back to make him look Asian, and he had this brown skin tint. And he put it all on. We were in the hotel in Korea, and he says, "I just feel ridiculous. I mean, I just feel ridiculous. Like they're going to take one look at me and throw me out." And we go out, and we get into the elevator, and this guy gets on the elevator and looks at him and says, "What part of India are you from?" We're like, okay, I guess it's going to work. So.
Oh, just to add to that, this guy's story, I tried to do a trial run with strangers and see what they thought. So in my building where I lived, once I got this look on, because I had this look on from, like 3 p.m. the previous day for a 4 a.m. play the next day. And I asked a stranger, okay, how old do you think I am? And then she looks at me and says, are you wearing a disguise? And I was like, okay, thanks for the confidence.
Yeah, not a good sign.
All right.
I think fat suit might be the way to go.
A fat suit.
Fat suit. That might be. Yeah, that might be a.
Well, but if they're looking at his face and saying East Indian, fat suit may not affect the picture any.
Yeah.
In your notes you sent us before the show, you said you were once chased around a Mississippi casino by security. What happened?
Oh, yeah. This is a trip I made to meet an AP friend, and we did this trip with his relative. And my AP friend said, Ram, why don't you go to this casino with my relative and do your, team play. It was a card eating play at that time. And, while I pick you up in a couple of hours, and you can call me and I'll come and pick you up. And I said, okay, fine. And I actually liked that idea because I didn't want him to be seen with the AP because he was very notorious in those parts. And now that he can just pick me up, I wouldn't have to worry about, my car, my, license plate being used to find who I was and all that stuff. So we go into this small casino. It no longer exists, so I guess I can use the name. I think it's called the Grand, and in Vicksburg. And we're playing, and we start off the bat kind of losing, and then we make a comeback. We're only up like a few $100s, and but that was enough for them to, suddenly get anxious. And there were some calls going in and out. Nothing happens. We continue playing, and then suddenly someone comes and says, you can no longer play. I'm like, okay. And I was actually using a card at that time. This was in my first year of full-time play, so I was actually using my card, and but I decided to walk out of the place. I didn't want to go to the cage. So the guy who backs me off, he was surprised that I chose not to cash the chips. So he keeps following me, and he keeps calling me out by name. And I go to the exit, and I make my call. So he realizes that, okay, this guy doesn't have a car now, so someone is going to come and pick him up. So let's get him. And he gets into a car, and he positions his car ready to follow whoever is going to come and pick me up. And I tell this to my AP friend and says, when you come, just park a few feet off, and I'll come in and get into your car. And he's like, no, why are you paranoid? Nothing is going to happen to you. Nobody's going to follow you. I'm like, no, this is for real.
Why didn't you walk off the property?
That's exactly what I did after. I took about 5 minutes, and I said, okay, I'm going to walk off the property. And I go into, I keep walking, and then this car starts following me now. And so what I did, I started walking fast, and then I suddenly make a dash into one of the pubs there. So like hoping that he wouldn't notice which door I walked into. Then I call for a cab from the pub and say, I need this cab to go to one of the malls. And then, they get a cab for me. And in the meanwhile, my AP friend notices that there is this casino security car that's making circles around, that area. And he's like, Ram, what you did say is true. They are ready to get us here. And so once the cab comes over, I decide that I'm going to run out into the cab and tell him to just drive fast. And as, bad variants would have it, right as I got into the cab, the casino car was behind us. And so they got to see
that cab.
Me. Yeah, and then they follow us into the into the mall. And there I get out of the cab and go into a dress barn, and I hang out for like 25, 30 minutes. And all along, my AP friend, he gets this, he has this great entertainment. He says, this is so much fun watching. And he says, the people who are following me were also getting entertained. This probably made their day because, they're just bored out of, their life on a normal day. Here they get to actually chase somebody for the fun of it. And they were actually laughing too. So, and then they waited half an hour for me to, they probably waited like 10 or 15 minutes and then they left the place. So, all to get my ID, which I'd already given when I got my player's card. So this is, one of the more amusing stories without any major damage.
I one time was at a casino in California and got backed off, and they had no idea what was going on. They just didn't like the fact that I was winning, and I had a partner on the table that they didn't realize we were together. Anyway, so I went and got the car, and I left, and I went down to a gas station that had a convenience store to wait for him because cell phone service is really bad in the area. And I'm sitting in the gas station, and here come casino security on bicycles. And, they come up and very obviously stop their bicycles in the front of my car, so it can't go anywhere, and take out their notepads and write down my license plate. I'm like, okay, fine, now you got my license plate, but I had to call my friend and say, don't come here now, and I drove away, and then I had to come back and pick him up somewhere down the road. He had to walk for a bit, but.
All right, you mentioned a couple times that you work with big players. Have you done that a lot? Have you learned anything while doing that?
Yes. I use big players for a lot of my advanced plays. So a lot of those big players are also my friends, who originally started out as professional contacts and turned out to be good friends. It does help quite a bit when it, especially when it can work in a straight card counting scenario where you have a call-in, big player call-in, or even a big player at the table, and you're signaling a gorilla play. You can only imagine how well it could work when it's not as straightforward as card counting, and something more is going on, and you can basically camp out at a table for hours, guiding the player at specific times what to do. So
how did you progress from straight card counting into more advanced things?
One of my friends from my professional contacts, he was into all these things, and he himself was a fairly inexperienced, but he would tell me, Ram, I think if you learn this, I think you can be really, really good at this. And he would have some really good words to say about that. And so he sowed the seeds in my head. And one of his contacts, when he was on a play, he wanted me as a big player for a play that we did in Vegas, and I was the big player then. And then he wanted me to be the big player for a play in an Atlantic City casino. And on my first session as a big player in the casino, I asked him, how do you do this? And he gave me some basic pointers as to how he was doing it, and said, do you mind if I tried? And I would, bet low on my own, calculations. But when you give me the signal, I would bet as we discussed, but I would like to try it myself too. And he saw me do that, and he saw that I was successful. And so he said, okay, right after this session, let's go back to your apartment, and I'm going to teach you this stuff. And so we went back. He taught me this stuff, and and this actually explains why, in a kind of a way that why I got into this whole profession, because I could connect with the math, I could connect with the understanding of the probabilities, I could connect with, the organization of things in my head to be able to perform some of these things, and which is why I think I got attracted to the game in the first place. And so I think there's a kind of a good fit from a talent perspective, and yeah, that's how I got into it. And
I just want to say one of the things I find really annoying is when we use a generic term like advanced plays. I seem to get a response from a lot of people like, "Oh, you mean hole cards?" As if that is the only other advanced play that people do. And I just want to say that there are many ways to skin a cat, and there are many advanced plays that have absolutely nothing to do with hole cards, which obviously you're talking about. And so anyway, I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, it's a non-hole carding based advanced play.
Right. And the problem that most people have is there are no books on these things. So, there are things mentioned in the literature, but there is no
CAA.
Even CAA, some of these things are not really talked about, and definitely not analyzed. So, yeah. So anyway, that's why it surprised me, because that technique you're talking about is something that I've kind of been playing for quite a while, and there are just very few people who do it. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I'm glad that nobody has written a detailed account on that because.
Although you burned out a lot of games, Ron.
Fighting words. All right.
But hey, it's good. You made money doing it, so.
and I guess it was not intentionally, but I would say aggressive milking of those games has caused some of that to happen.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're playing full-time now. That means you're no longer working in an IT department somewhere. How much do you play? How do you manage your hours? Stuff like that.
For the past 5 years, it's almost been an immersive experience for me. And that's that. By that I mean a lot of my time either I am actually playing, or I'm traveling, or I'm discussing a strategy, or another, or a trip with someone else, or I'm, narrating the experience, getting feedback from a friend. Everything to do with advantage play in some form or the other, whether it be primarily blackjack, but it's also video poker, occasionally something to do with sports, and occasionally, other table games, Mississippi Stud or Ultimate Texas Hold'em, something like that. And so the strict playing hours, I would say, have been anywhere between 400 to 700, but the average has been about 500 hours of table games play a year, which includes just the time that we actually play, and then several hundred hours of video poker, and and countless hours of planning and discussing and
travel time.
Yeah. So everything is basically revolving around this, or has revolved around this for the past 5 years.
And now, are you burned out?
No. When I got into this, I told myself that I'm going to try and play in a manner that gives me longevity, which in my mind, I felt like if I'm going to get less than, 10 back-offs a year, and there are 700 casinos in America and several hundred casinos outside. I should be able to play as long as I want to. And so I've been very careful in my play, and which means I've sacrificed EV for longevity.
I should clarify. I didn't mean the casinos burned you out. I meant personally, emotionally. Are you getting burned out on playing, spending all that time playing?
Yeah, this year has been my hardest working year, and it has caused me to reflect. And I feel so blessed that I have been able to get to that point, and think about life in a different way. And yes, I feel that there is a lot more to life. Life is too short for just advantage play or just blackjack. And I'm focusing my efforts on leading a more wholesome life with the multitude of activities, of which blackjack or AP would also be a part of it.
Yeah.
But you've run into other players getting burned out. Have you? Do you have any wisdom to other players who are getting burned out?
Oh, most definitely. Okay, you can call it wisdom, but I would just say my perspective on this is, when you think about the game, a lot of, or almost everybody I know who's gotten into this gets into it for the fun of it. And then at some stage, the people who are, talented are able to hone their talent into skills and are able to make substantial sums of money. What happens at that stage is it becomes a very self-absorbed. The self-absorption takes over, and it leads to a situation where other parts of your life can get ignored. Maybe family, maybe health, maybe your hobbies. And my advice would be to look at it as as something that's fun. If it's, to me at this point in life, I feel when I can keep it at a level which is part-time, then I retain the fun element of it. I'm also able to support myself through this. But when I include other elements of my life, in my hobbies and family and other areas of my life, in the society, doing something for the community, all those elements make me feel very alive in my life. Just playing blackjack feels like a job, because the more you do of a certain thing which doesn't have an element of involving others or helping others or having an impact, either social impact or any other impact, positive impact, it is very hard to get that fulfillment. And for me, I feel blessed that I've been able to do this for 5 years. And the big help that I've gotten from this is the free time that has helped me to reflect and do things outside. And on further reflection, I feel why not try and incorporate it as part of my daily life, and maybe reduce the hours. So the hours, if you can be disciplined with the hours, and try and not try and be too materialistic. I think too much of focus on just trying to make a lot of money or just trying to get the hours can hurt definitely in the long run, because one comes at the expense of the other, and you lose the appreciation of your friends or the time that you can spend with friends and family, and wide range of diverse activities that you can do, like music, and there are so many other things that you can do that's going to be a lot more fulfilling. Is my opinion.
You can become Maharishi Blackjack and lead the spiritual quest for the gamblers.
All right. We're talking to Ram about his blackjack experiences. We're going to take a brief break. And we have more questions for Ram following the commercials, which will be shorter today than usual because we're taping this a week early. And so this is going to air on the 12th of January, and we're taping it on the 5th. So some things we know about what's going to be in that week, and some things we don't. So we thank our sponsors for understanding. South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more games than anybody else has. Every Sunday through Wednesday in January, a total of 17 dates, you earn a free spin for every $2,000 coin in video poker or $500 coin in on slots. Limit of 4 spins a day. Lowest price seems to be $7.50 in points, which makes it a 0.375% promotion. The average is about 0.5%. So this is a nice low roller promotion. Even the lowest prize, which you get most of the time, it's still better than double points up to your first $8,000 a day coin in. Double points will be Monday, January 18th, Martin Luther King Day. This is extra good because it's one of the days where you earn wheel spins for your first $8,000 coin in. At the Palms, you may earn tickets for Friday and Saturday night drawings at 7:15 p.m. Unlike the way it's been for the last 6 months or so, these the prizes are $6,250 a night, and you must be present to win. PFP, play for prizes. From now until January 15th, you earn Chevron gas cards. From January 18th through January 29th, you get Costco gift cards. Cards are redeemed at a rate of 0.2% up to $190 per day. You keep the points. 2 days in January, one left now. On the 20th of January, you swipe to get a random multiplier. Can be between 2x and 15x. You may earn up to 40,000 bonus points a day. So how many points you can actually earn depends on what your multiplier is. At videopoker.com, it's the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month, $79.95 a year, this allows you to get corrections on most of the games. It's a good place to practice quick quads, which I personally will be playing on Double Point Day. Usually we talk about the game of the week. As of when I'm taping this, I don't know the game of the week that's actually going to be when it's aired. So I'm going to talk about 5-play multi-strike. Multi-strike is a game that was invented by the Leading Edge Design, which is not videopoker.com, but putting into 5-play was a joint experience, so you get the best of both worlds. Multi-strike is a 20 coin per game. If you're playing 5-play, it's 100 coins. You on multi-strike, you bet on the bottom line. If you at least get your money back, you get to go up to the next line. If you don't get your money back, the game is over. And if you get up to the second line, now your all pays are doubled because you only get up to it half the time, more or less. So that's why they're doubling all payouts. If you at least get your money back and go up to the next line, then all pays are multiplied by 4. And if you get your money back at least and go up to the fourth line, then everything is multiplied by 8. There are different strategy adjustments for each of the level, because in most games, once you play a hand, it's over. In multi-strike, once you play a hand, you sometimes get to play free hands in addition. So you tend to go more for getting anything than getting the best. So
So you can change the way you draw from one line to the next?
You can certainly change your strategy.
Yeah.
And we'll be teaching the Jacks Are Better strategy in this upcoming semester at the South Point. The exact days as we speak, have not been decided. We will be posting this soon on bobdancer.com when we get the dates. All right. In Atlantic City story, you were losing kind of big, and there's some story about a water bottle. It sounds like an expensive water bottle. What was that all about, Ram?
Yeah. This was in my early days of the non-hole carding advanced play. So we were very excited about this opportunity to do this play, and me and a couple of my friends who are also big players for the play, we were attacking this casino with very high bets, and we were betting up to 15,000 a round on certain specific situations, but quite often we were betting like 6,000 a round. That was again specific situations. That was our max bet, and our minimum bet was like $100. So, there's quite a big range, and we were so unlucky on that play that after about 50 hours, we had lost a substantial amount of money, like just about low six figures, and the casino was not very happy throughout that play. They sensed that something was not right, and it seemed like they got the feeling that they were very lucky to have gotten on, to be winning on their side.
You think maybe spreading from 100 to 15,000 might have had something to do with that?
That's not a clue, is it, Richard?
Gamblers do have hunches.
Yeah.
And but this was my first year of, the second year of full-time play. And so it was, the other elements of my play weren't that polished. So when I was using my third big player, we had played all night, and it was me, my big player, and there was another player from another table who would, from a random ploppy, who ended up joining our table, and he played through the whole night for whatever reason, and we couldn't get him off the table, and by the time the shift changed and we played through the shift change, it was like 6:30 in the morning. I was really tired, and my big player was tired even before me. And he said, he's done for the night. And that session was like, almost a break-even session or a small loss. So he's like, I'm done for the night. I'm going. And I was so tired. I wanted to go get some sleep, but I couldn't leave at the same time. So, I ended up trying to play a few more hands. And as, luck would have it, I ended up like losing like 13 or 14 of the next 16 hands or some, betting, table minimum bets, but it was still frustrating. I said, okay, I'm not going to put up with this, for long. I'm going to use this as an excuse and leave. So, I've been drinking tons of water, and to take my water bottle and, I said, okay, I'm going to be really angry. It wasn't very difficult to be really angry then. And I take this empty water bottle and I dunk that water bottle into the garbage can. That's it. It's, instead of dropping it into the garbage can, I dunked it with some force. And
nothing but net.
Yeah. It did go in well. So it was a good score there. And the next afternoon, while I was at the table, ready to start my next session, the casino shift manager and someone else comes over. They keep pointing towards me, and then they say, we know what you did in the morning, and what you did was throw this water bottle, and that could have hurt someone and could have caused a lot of harm. so we are not going to deal to you, and I think you're causing a nuisance, and we'll have to, we can't deal cards to you anymore.
The dangerous water bottle.
Yeah.
Very dangerous.
This is the way that Atlantic City bars people now. I mean, because they can't legally bar you from playing blackjack, so they come up with some bullshit excuse to say you created a disturbance or whatever. And I've actually heard stories of them really trying to provoke people by coming up and sort of saying nasty things, trying to get the person angry enough to, to yell at them or, whatever. And then they can say, that's it. You're 86, for causing a disturbance or whatever.
All right. Did you ever get backed off in front of anybody famous?
Yes. This happened earlier this year. I was in Australia. I try to combine. I make my international trips. If possible, I try to combine it with something interesting. And this was a big sporting event. The Cricket World Cup was held in Australia this year, and I was in Melbourne. And I was playing at this casino there, and they had a game with really, really bad rules, but they were tolerating some big action. And I said, okay, I'm going to try and at least get a free vacation out of this and, generate enough EV to make it worthwhile. And I ended up playing a lot of hours there. And one fine day when the casino decided that they had had enough of me, even as a losing player, they said, the casino manager comes up to me and gives me a letter and says, you are allowed to bet the table minimum. And so basically flat betting me to table minimum, and you're not allowed to jump your bets because of what you're doing. And I was like, okay. And just a few minutes back, I was joined by David Warner, the Australian cricket vice captain now, and his fiancée. And I showed this letter to him, like, look what they have done to me. It's like, okay, if ever there's going to be a back off here, I can get some mileage out of this by showing it to him. And he sees this and he's like, oh, how can they do this to players? This is ridiculous. I'm going to talk to my host, pull some strings, and get this. They can't do this to you.
Oh, yes, they can.
And so he actually, and I know what's going to happen. You can get the Prime Minister of Australia, and they're not going to revoke anything. But he tries, and then he reads this letter, and his fiancée reads the letter, and they're amused, and they see me bet the table minimum, and then the count goes negative. I'm like, I'm not even going to do this anymore. I'm just going to sit and watch. And all along, there's another player at the table too, and we all share jokes about how Warner was making jokes about how the only player who could beat them is not allowed to play. And
I'm sorry, Ram, we're really out of time for today, so we're going to need to cut it off there. Thank you very much, Bob.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you, Steve. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.
You've been listening to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Subscribe to the show in iTunes, and episodes will be delivered to you automatically every week. Archived versions of past shows may be found at bobdancer.com and richardmunchkin.com. We welcome emails at gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com. Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin are both available on Facebook and welcome your questions. The sponsors for the show are the South Point Hotel, Casino and Spa, the M Resort, the Palms Casino Resort, and the website videopoker.com. Join us again next week for another Gambling with an Edge.
views and opinions expressed on this program were those of the hosts and guests and did not necessarily reflect those of Vegas All Net Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company.